Hey bro. Hey, what's up? I was thinking about regearing my truck soon. Which one do you think I should go with? Yeah, I think you should go with the 4.88s. Well, I was thinking 5.29s.
Well, I think you should go with 6.9s.
You! Yo, what up squad? It's your boy K-Flow. And in this video, we're going to be talking about regearing. Now let's get this thing started. Hey guys, first and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting the content creation of this channel. And I want to wish you all an awesome new year. And let's make this new year great by filling our trucks with sweet mods. Now this video will be the start of a regearing series. And today I will be talking about the details of regearing, what it is, why should you do it, and what type of regearing ratio you should have for your truck. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button guys, and make sure you also hit that bell so you're up to date with how these video series progresses. Before we get into the subject, I just want to give a couple quick shout outs. First to Diego Martinez. Thank you so much for giving me the tech specs on your truck. That really helped with making the technical data, at least for this specific video. Thank you. If you guys haven't checked out his Instagram yet, you can find him at lordofspicytacos. His Tacoma is pretty sweet. Actually, correction, it's pretty spicy. So make sure you check that out. Second shout out goes to Matthew Broder. Thank you so much for the generous donation of my beer fund. And I know you mentioned Money IPA in the message, but unfortunately I could not find them in any of the 3 liquor stores I visited around in my area. But I know it's not Oceanside, New York. I did find a different IPA. That's what we're gonna be drinking today. This one is from Brooklyn, New York. And this is from the Kings County Brewers Collective. And this beer is the Superhero Sidekicks IPA. Let's crack one of these things. Cheers, gentlemen. Thank you so much. That is really good. So you guys definitely gotta try it. Don't worry, Matt, I will find that Money IPA. Also, just to add, Matt is a chef and just recently started a YouTube channel, and I checked out some of his videos and he makes some awesome looking brownies. So make sure you guys check him out. I'll link it down in the description below. So what is regearing, guys? Regearing, in the automotive sense, is actually just swapping the ring and pinion gear in your front and rear differential so you have a different gear ratio at the final drive. I know that probably all sounded like technical mumbo jumbo, but I'll touch a little bit more on that later in this video. And regearing is definitely one of the unsexiest mod that you could put on your truck because you can't see it, and it's very expensive to do a regearing to the diffs. But your driving foot and your driving in general will really appreciate it. So why do you want to regear? That answer basically boils down to 2 main things. Number 1 is when you're increasing the tire size from stock to 33s or 35s, you're effectively reducing the torque output, so you'll have to compensate for that. Number 2, when you're increasing the weight of the truck, such as steel bumpers, rooftop tent, and all of that, that will also increase your rolling resistance, further slowing down your truck even more. And if you're building your truck, you'll be doing both very quickly. So make sure you're paying attention to this video, because if you're driving an automatic, you're actually going to need that sooner than if you're driving a manual. And we're going to get deep into the calculations and the engineering. And I mean balls deep. So make sure you have your coffee and pay close attention.
Hold on to your butts.
Because K-Flow is about to drop some
Knowledge.
So what is a gear ratio exactly? You guys know that a gear has teeth. And when it comes to a simple gear system, you have a driving gear and a driven gear. So the gear ratio is taking the number of teeth of the driven gear and dividing that by the number of the teeth of the driving gear. So when you further simplify that math, you actually end up with decimals like 4.88, 5.29. Get the picture?
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
This means that the driving gear, which is your pinion gear on the differential, will have to spin 4.88 times so that your ring gear can spin once. That is your gear ratio. Well, the point is, when you're increasing or decreasing the gear ratio, you're also messing around with the torque output. So for example, if you're reducing the gear ratio, you're also reducing the torque output, but you're increasing the speed. And here's a quick example of what I mean by that. And same thing when it comes to increasing the gear ratio. When you're going from 4.88 to 5.29, you are effectively increasing the torque output, but you are reducing your overall top speed. And here's another example of the flip side of gear ratio going up above 1. So that you guys get a better understanding of the increase in torque when it comes to increasing the overall width of the gear and the gear ratio. Like, picture this. If you have a small ratchet, you can really spin that very fast, but there's no torque. You're not going to be braking lugs with a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. But if you had a breaker bar, you can brake lugs pretty easily, but obviously you won't be able to spin that so fast. So now that you have a better understanding of what gear ratio is, now let's talk about gear systems. Gear system, in the engineering sense, is a system of gears that achieves one engineering output. And in our case, it's the drivetrain on the Tacoma. And if you think about it, the gear system on the drivetrain starts with the driving force, which is the engine, which then goes into the transmission, then goes into the transfer case, and then splits in those two drive shafts and goes to the front and the rear diff. And if you think about it even further, it goes from the diff into the wheels, and the wheels is basically another gear that goes into the ground, just like a rack and pinion gear. It's a huge rack, which is the ground. Mind-blowing, right? And to add to that overall idea, each of those components of the drivetrain has its own gear ratio. And if you want to know what the gear ratio is from the engine to the wheel, all you gotta do is multiply across each component. So you guys are getting it, right? I mean, it's not that hard. It did take me a little while to figure out a good way to explain all this, so I hope you're following. And if you need to pause the video to catch your brain, please feel free to pause and rewind at any time.
The prophecy is true.
Alright guys, so the first thing I did was go to thecarconnection.com and searched up my truck, which is a 2009 Toyota Tacoma, and then I picked the specific trim. As you can see, I picked a 4-wheel drive, double cab, V6 manual transmission. Now if we scroll down all the way to performance specs, we'll see the gear ratio for this truck. And for my case, I was concerned with first gear ratio, and this ratio is for first gear on the transmission, the transfer case gear ratio, and the transfer case gear ratio for 4 low, that is. And obviously for 4 high, the gear ratio is 1, so it's just 1 to 1. And if we scroll down even more, we'll find the axle gear ratio, and this is the gear ratio of the ring and pinion gear and the rear diff, which is the same axle ratio for the front diff. So all this information I put into a spreadsheet. I did a comparison of automatic and manual transmission. So manual has a higher gear ratio than automatic. And I did the same thing for second, third, fourth, fifth gear, but I will not be using this in this calculation. And the transfer case I did show here, as well as the axle ratio here. And just a quick note guys, this data only applies for the second gen. So now doing some math guys, all we're doing is multiplying the gear ratio of the transmission, the transfer case, and the differential. And this is the overall final gear ratio that we get. And I did the same thing for manual, as you can see here. Now when we're regearing, we're actually swapping the axle gear ratio with our new gear ratio, which is the either 4.88 and 5.29. So as you can see in the math, that's highlighted here. And these refer back to the transmission and the transfer case. So now after we have all this data, what I did was I did a percentage comparison of the differences between each of these items versus the automatic. So automatic stock versus automatic stock obviously has a 0% difference. And as soon as you go up to 488 gears, you'll end up with a 30% difference in terms of torque output. And as you can see, manual stock has 18% higher torque output than the automatic. And as soon as we jump to 4.56, it's already 44% higher torque output than the automatic. And if we scroll down and put everything on a graph, here's what the data looks like visually. And as you can see, when you go with the manual 4.56, you're already a higher torque output than the automatic 5.29. But what's really surprising is a manual 5.29 has a 68% higher torque output than the automatic stock. Real quick guys, according to my YouTube analytics, 88% of you guys are still not subscribed yet. So make sure you smash that like and subscribe button already. So as you can see, that's why I can get away with not regearing my truck yet. The manual transmission has 16% more torque output at the wheels than the automatic transmission. So that's why I kind of push all the automatic transmission people to get that regearing done right away. So you're probably gonna ask, what is the proper gear ratio for me? But before you ask that, you have to ask two other questions before that. Number one is, what tire size are you gonna go with for your final setup? Are you gonna stick to 33s forever, or are you going to go up to 35s? Number two is, how heavy are you planning to have your setup? Are you having steel bumpers, rooftop tent, and the whole shebang there? Or are you sticking to bone stock? So here's the quick and dirty answer guys. I'll break it down to automatic and manual transmission. So first, automatic. If you're going with 33s, right away, go with the 4.88s. Because you already know that you're 16% underpowered compared to the manual transmission. So right away, just go with the 4.88. And if you're going 35s, definitely go with the 5.29s right away. It just takes a little bit more weight for you to need to have that gear ratio. Now for manuals, I mean, that's also from my own experience, you can kind of get away without having a regear for a while. But if you are planning on going 35s, get 4.53s right away. And if you're planning on going 35s with the armor and all that extra weight, then you might want to go with 4.88. But you never really want to go to 5.29s because you'll end up having super high torque, which is going to be awesome for off-road. But your top end speed will suffer in the highway. So let's take a look at a couple of case studies, guys. Here's Jason from one of the Facebook groups that I follow, which is the manual transmission Tacomas. He mentioned that he has a 2019 manual transmission with nitro 5.29s. And having that extra torque off-road definitely makes this thing a beast on the trails. So I asked him, how's the 5.29 gearing with the manual, and what is your speed at 6th gear at 3000 RPM? Jason already mentioned that he probably should have gone 4.88s, but happy with 5.29s. At 3000 RPM, he's roughly at 75 miles per hour. So as you can see, highway driving suffers a little bit when it comes to higher gearing. So here is another quick case study, guys. Diego Martinez, aka Lord of Spicy Tacos, I asked him how he likes his 4.56 gearing and if he's happy with it. He wishes he went higher, but only because he wants bigger tires. He also mentions that 4.56 with 35s is almost exactly factory ratio, and this is for manual transmission. And this information he got from his Toyota dealership mechanic. If you guys want me to do a speed analysis for the 33s and 35s versus the regear, let me know, because I can put that together. It does take me some time, so leave that in the comment section below. So now let's talk about cost, guys, because this is another driver when it comes to making your decision. And I did a cost comparison for 3 different scenarios. And this is for a full front regear, a rear regear, and rear lockers. And according to my cost calculation here, if I went full DIY, that cost for my truck is $24.25. Now, I did the same thing. I went to East Coast Gear Supply and did a semi DIY route. So that's just replacing the third members, and all you have to do is do like a core swap where you're taking the third member of your truck, shipping it out to them, and them shipping you the third member with all the gears installed. That cost is $26.90. It's not that bad. It's only a little bit over $200 than the full DIY build. And lastly, I went to my local shop here. There's a Globex in my town, and the full shop install is $38.53, which is like well over $1,000 and change versus the semi DIY build. And obviously with this build, I went with the semi DIY build because the adjustments itself will take me an extra long time, and that will be also money saved when it comes to having to buy more specialty tooling. This thing is definitely labor intensive. You have to watch Eric the Car Guy.
It took a little bit of time to get these shims correct. I started with the shims that the differential came in with originally and found those to be a bit too tight. So I started removing shims until I felt like I had what was an acceptable amount of preload. You do want some preload on these carrier bearings, but not so much that you really have to hammer in the shim pack. Once I felt I had an acceptable preload, I started swapping shims from side to side to get the backlash I wanted.
You'll see that there's going to be a lot of work and rework to get the proper specs on the ring and pinion gear and make those fine adjustments to make sure that the gears mesh properly. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you found it useful. I know this got super detailed and super technical, and I hope you were able to pay attention and power through it. As I said, make sure you stay tuned, because in the next few videos I'll be showing you how to remove your third members and install a new one, including the lockers. I will also be putting a central air system to power these lockers, and it will be controlled on the same controller that my lights are controlled at. So make sure you stick around. This will be a few episodes because I will be going real deep into the topic. And if you were able to stay throughout this video, well, you're in luck, because I will also be giving away one of these t-shirts to one of you lucky mother lovers. So make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below, so I will be picking one of you at random. That's all I got for today, guys. Till next time, peace.